Hello, my name is Ingrid Hernandez, and I will be discussing my persuasive final speech. Did you know that ChatGPT was released in November 30th, 2022? Since then, ChatGPT has been used during and after the quarantine of COVID-19. People often use ChatGPT as a form of creating plans or even schedules and routines. They also often use it as a form of aid in education, or even go as far as using it as a form of a communication with oneself. In this speech, I will touch subjects on how ChatGPT harms the environment and the brain, and how it is generally used. By the end of the speech, I hope that you understand the importance of how ChatGPT and any generative AI is actually really more harmful than good, is doing more harmful than good. And I hope you find it in yourself to learn and research on how you yourself can work on lessening your usage of generative AIs. Naturally, ChatGPT was created to immerse a more efficient and fast way of surfing the web without the need of researching for yourself, since the generative use of AI does it for us anyway. Doing this actually harms the environment and society that we individuals live in. ChatGPT uses and wastes more energy at rapid speed with every question and releases more carbon dioxide in the airs at unnatural levels. According to MIT News, beyond electricity demand, a great deal of water is needed to cool hardware used for training, deploying, and fine-tuning generative AI models, which can strain municipal water supplies and disrupt local ecosystems. The increasing numbers of generative AI has also spurred demand for high-performance computing hardware, adding indirect environmental impacts from its manufacture and transport. This means the more use of generative AI, the more use of energy. The more use of energy, the higher the demand for electricity and water supply. And also according to MIT News, in a 2021 research paper, scientists from Google and University of California at Berkeley estimated that the training process alone consumed 1,287 megawatt hours of electricity. That is enough power to power about 120 average US homes for a year. Think about that. 1,287 megawatt hours of electricity. That is enough to power 120 average US homes for 1 year. So imagine how much carbon dioxide that releases in the air. It is generating about 552 tons of carbon dioxide. So if the training process alone can generate 552 tons of carbon dioxide to release in the air, imagine how many megawatts of one singular question uses and how many tons of carbon dioxide is released from one question. So ChatGPT not only does harm the environment, but in discussion of carbon dioxide, it also harms the brain. You see, the consumption of carbon dioxide is what reduces the level of oxygen. So when it reduces the level of oxygen, it reduces it to the brain, which damages the stream of thinking and can cause problems such as memory loss, which is not the only problem it causes, but it's one of them. According to the National Institutes of Health, it causes a number of vascular changes in the brain, including increased cerebral blood flow, cerebral blood volume, as well as a higher CO2 and O2 concentrations in the blood. Which brings us to our next point, that due to the lack of oxygen pouring through our brain, it closes many windows of creativity, creating a more mushed version of our brains rather than a more mature and strong one. You see, the MIT Media Lab did an experiment on 3 separate groups. One group was dedicated in only using LLM assisted essay writing. Another group was brain use only. So there was no generative use of AI and it was only usage of brain. And the third group was neutral party, using both. We are focusing on the 2 groups that use the LLM and the brain only. the LLM group, when they switched to the brain-only use, they performed poorly because they were not able to think. They were not able to create thought for themselves or to even develop any research skills. Whereas the brain use only, when they switched to the LLM use only, they performed great. They had no struggle because they were able to have research skills. They had research skills and they were able to think for themselves without the use of any generative AI. So the lack of creativity, it puts people in a box, causing more stress than usual, which leads to illnesses. And stress is one of the main sources in creating illnesses, one of them being depression. According to the Santiago University, a more recent 2025 survey suggested over 50% used major LLMs like ChatGPT. And from the National Institute of Mental Health, that 59 million Americans are experiencing mental health issues, which applies to the finding of their survey conducted in February 2025 that close to 49% of LLM users with self-reported mental health issues employs LLMs specifically for mental health support. One of the LLMs being ChatGPT. The ongoing use of ChatGPT as a form of mental health support is not the only problem. It is also a problem in the Department of Education. One of the uses of ChatGPT is to enhance and enhance the research speed by double. Hence, students using generative AI to boost and aid their studies. Now, some students, they use generative AI in order to develop some practice problems that they can solve themselves, and it'll aid them in their studies. However, the majority of students that use AI is more towards as a copy and paste tool to problems and answers to homeworks, quizzes, assignments, exams, etc. This is very irresponsible, whereas the other one is a productive use. However, both harm the environment and the brain. Either way, or however you use it, generative AI harms. So in conclusion, we talked about how ChatGPT harms the environment, the mind, and how ChatGPT is used. Due to the consistent use of ChatGPT, climate change will soar and it will damage ecosystems, and it will not allow or give time to rehabilitate due to shortage of water supply. Now that we have touched on how ChatGPT is more harmful than useful, I would like to invite you to continue researching about the matter and come up with one way you can help reduce the amount of generative AI you take part in. Thank you.